Hi, and welcome to Two Tired Teachers. On a recent trip, when water was running in the kitchen sink, I realized we had a problem because we had water coming out from behind the rear wheel well on the kitchen side. And when I looked into the sink, I found out that this pipe had come out, and that's what was allowing the water to drain. And the washer had actually gone all the way down, and that was still screwed in. So my solution was I simply took a small roll of um, Gorilla Tape, wrapped around the bottom of that, and to prevent the washer from sliding back down, was easily able to reinstall that and screwed it back on. But the reason that this had happened is because under the sink there is a wing nut that, as you drive, this thing's bouncing around. This had come loose. And the fact that was loose allowed the sink to shift some. And so over time, that pipe had come loose. But that meant I need to reseal around this sink. So this is going to be a lot like painting. It's 90% prep work and 10% actually caulking. So I took a razor blade and carefully went around. Now, while that wing nut was loose, I would go on and shift the sink so that I would have access to a little bit more of the section that I was trying to caulk or was going to be resealing. But this is just a very time-consuming process, but cleaning all of this up is going to give a much better seal. And so going all the way around all of this, and while I was at it, decided I was going to go on and do the backsplash as well, because it was coming loose in a few places, and go on and do the bathroom while I was getting it all done. And so when we got home from the trip, I was able to finish getting this all cleaned up. And like I said, make sure that you get all of the little pieces away. And then just use some painter's tape here and am putting down tape on the counter. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the base of the sink so that there's a very small little gap there that the silicone sealant or caulk is actually going to go into. And something you're going to want to do is, like ours, I was able to find it brown, and so that matched well. On the rounded corners, the way to get that to match is simply to tear little bitty strips of tape to make it as rounded as possible. But like I said, this was a very time-consuming process trying to get all of this taped with the kitchen sink, the backsplash in the kitchen, and then all of it in the bathroom as well. And trying to get it as straight and even as possible. And so like I said, came back through and then did the same with the bottom of the sink, and leaving just that tiny little gap and going completely around. It is close quarters and trying to get behind the sink, but that's the gap that I was looking for. And at this point, I have tightened down that little nut so that the sink is in place where it needs to stay. And I've decided that every 6 months, as I'm sanitizing the tanks, that's going to be the time that in the kitchen and the bathroom both, I'm going to go around and check that. Now, for this backsplash area, I'm going to tell you that when we come back and I do this, I do caulk inside of here, but then I also used a it's called a peel and stick caulk that folds, and so the places where the silicone had stuck a little bit to the wallpaper, it's going to cover all of that up. So the prep work in the kitchen area and then the bathroom, I got to tell you, that was painstaking to go around and peel all of those little bitty pieces to get around the curved sink, but did the best I could to make just that little bitty gap, and then did the same, going to be doing exactly the same thing on the backsplash in the bathroom. While I'm doing it, have the caulk, figured this was the time to get it done. Okay, now we're finally ready to actually go in and caulk. And so just taking my time, putting down a consistent bead of caulk, and then once I get that bead of caulk around, the goal then is going to be to go back, and using your fingers really about the best tool that I came up with, and actually trying to force that caulk into that little bitty seam as well as I possibly could. And once again, this is just take some time and literally trying to force it in as much as possible. And um, you can see how I'm kind of bouncing that to try and make sure that I get it all up inside of there. And do this all the way around. And you do want to be careful because some of that little bitty pieces of tape there uh, can want to try and peel up. So you want to be sure that you don't get that. But um, this I did all the way around the kitchen sink, around the backsplash, and then in the bathroom, I will tell you, up underneath the faucets in the bathroom, um, it was very difficult, but essentially just got caulk on my finger and was able to work that in up underneath the faucet set in the restroom area. But once all of this is done, and I went on and did all of the kitchen, and then went and did the bathroom. Um, Before this gets completely dry, you peel the tape back, because if it gets completely dry, you don't want to take a chance on it sticking just to the tape and not in the actual seam, which is where you want it to be. And so while it's still, before it has completely set, go back around and peel the tape so that it leaves that nice little bead. And I will show you the end result here in just a second. But this is not a hard job. It's just tedious, time consuming to get all of this, especially the little bitty pieces of tape. And you do want to have a trash can handy where you can just drop this stuff in there because, like I said, that caulk is still kind of tacky. And so it's going to get on whatever you set it down on. Okay. And so this is what that bead of fresh caulk looks like there at the sink. Now, this is that backsplash I was talking about. It's like a peel and stick caulk, but it did not have that slit. And so what I did was I knew that it would be easier to put down if I was able to adhere, just trying to get it to fold and stay in place, and peeled the tape off at the same time, I didn't think would work very well. So I went on and just scored that paper, and then went and put the bottom part on the back of the counter and made sure that that lined up properly and got it seated. Now, once again, I did put the caulk in there first, just because I want to make sure this is good and watertight. And so then peeled the bottom part off, got it stuck down, and then you'll see that I went back and peeled off the top. And I am going to mention here on the right of this, you can see we put in extra little metal plates to put our magnets on because we like getting magnets from national parks. And that's just on with some Velcro tape on the back of that. But anyway, as you can see, now coming back in, sticking down that top part was a whole lot easier because I'd scored the back of that. And I'm very pleased with the fact that worked well. And it also covered where any of the little uh, paper, the wallpaper had stuck just a little bit to to the to the silicone that I'd taken up. Okay, so this is the finished product in the kitchen and the bathroom. Use that peel and stick as well in here, and am very pleased with how it turned out. Once again, not a difficult project, but very time consuming. Thanks for watching Two Tired Teachers.